Hello friends, Dan Brubaker here, Variant Quran. Wanted to give you an update and an analysis today. It is the 30th of October, 2024. We are just days away from probably one of the most consequential elections in the United States in my lifetime. Harris running against Donald Trump, the two of them vying for the presidency of the United States. I want to talk to you today about one particular issue after I bring you up to date on something that just happened today. The Supreme Court ruled today in favor of Governor Glenn Youngkin in Virginia, who has sought to remove non-citizens from the Virginia voting rolls. Now, I want to give you a little bit of background today as well, because I and others played some part in this. Now, how big my part was, it's not mine to say, but I was involved, and I thought it might be interesting for you all to know and understand how that happened. I was elected to the State Central Committee of the Republican Party of Virginia earlier this year, and in the process of doing that, I've been doing various various campaign things. I was also on the delegation for Virginia for Donald Trump at the Wisconsin Milwaukee convention, so went there and participated in that, as some of you know. But as part of my role on State Central Committee, I do have opportunity to be around the leadership of the Republican Party of Virginia, and also to interact with some of the people who are elected in office already and so forth. And as last month, actually, in early September, well, actually through August and into early September, I had become aware. I've been researching this actually for some time, and I have some friends who have been, one friend in particular who has been feeding me information, is also very keyed in on this issue of this problem, actually, of non-citizen voting. And it is an issue and a problem around the country, but it is specifically one in Virginia. And something came to my attention, and that was, and something was brought to my attention, and that is that there's a particular type of ID card in Virginia that is only given to people who are illegally present, or people who are unable to demonstrate legal presence in the United States. These are non-citizens, but they're not lawful non-citizens. Lawful non-citizens have a different type of ID card. And it was brought to my attention that at least one of the the election officer training manuals in a neighboring county, Prince William County, was directing their election officers to give regular ballots. These are ballots that are going to be counted just like any other ballot, to people who present this type of ID. It's called a driver privilege card, again, given only to illegal aliens in Virginia. And it is not valid. This card is not valid for voting. By law, it's not valid for voting in Virginia. And this election officer training manual was agreeing that it was not valid for voting, but it continued to say, after that, to state that if somebody presents this ID, then they can sign something called a voter identification statement, which does not confirm citizenship either. It just says, my name is, I affirm that my name is so-and-so. So then if they will sign that, then they can be given a ballot. So basically, this is allowing illegal aliens to vote in U.S. elections. Now, I went through the process of researching this to make sure that I had everything right, and also to rule out the possibility, one thing, these cards are issued for 2 years, maximum of 2 years. Is there a possibility that somebody, one of these people, might possibly become a U.S. citizen in the time frame since being assigned this driver privilege card? And I discovered through the agencies that it is not possible. There's no way that a illegally present person could become a U.S. citizen within the period of time before that card expires. No way, because even if somebody should happen to, and there's not even a pathway to green card status for somebody who's illegally present. But even for most people, by marriage there's one possibility. But even if somebody gets a green card, you still have to wait a period of years, minimum of 5 years, usually 8 years, before you can get citizenship, before you can apply for citizenship. So that says that nobody presenting this ID can be a citizen. There's no possibility of somebody presenting that idea. So far as unless there's something that I missed of somebody like that being a U.S. citizen. Anyway, I became aware of this, and I became aware that people in Prince William County, as well as in my own county of Loudoun, they're giving similar directions. They're training their election officers to give similar directions to allow illegal aliens, not even to mention non-citizens who are also not, by federal law, it is a felony for a non-citizen to vote in a U.S. federal election. Not to mention those. We're only dealing with the issue of illegal aliens. So when I became aware of this, as it happened, I had a meeting down in Richmond, Virginia, an executive meeting. And on this Saturday morning, the 14th of September, Governor Youngkin came in and he spoke for a few minutes at this meeting. I was sitting at the back of the room. I was with about 70 other people in the room, and I was talking to a colleague there about this information that I had just, this research that I have just explained to you. And she said, now's your chance. You're not going to get in front of the governor unless you go up there and can catch him on the way out. So when he was done speaking, as everybody was applauding, I went up, I got out of my seat, I walked around the side of the room, and I waited at the door, and I caught him on the way out. And I said to him, Governor Youngkin, are you aware that the Prince William County Election Officer Training Manual is directing them to give full ballots to illegal aliens? And he said, that is not my policy. And he was apparently not aware of that, and I explained it, just in a nutshell for him, and he said, send something to my assistant. His assistant, Matt, was right there with him, and so I exchanged contact information with Matt. I sent him over the details, including the photographs of this election officer training manual, and over the next several days, we were corresponding with me. He was by text message, and I believe we spoke by phone once or twice. And on Thursday, early voting was due to start on the 20th, and on Thursday the 19th, Matt called me and he said, we've been working on this all week, and he gave me his resolution. Now, I had proposed, had suggested that they should make clear to all the precincts in Virginia that under no circumstance, once somebody gives this particular form of ID, they're identifying themselves as an illegal alien, identifying themselves as a non-citizen. There's no way that they can be a citizen. And so even if they sign the identity confirmation statement, they should not be given a ballot. But Matt said that they had come to the conclusion that they were working very hard on a daily basis to get all non-citizens to review the voting rolls in Virginia and to get the non-citizens off of the voting rolls. And so, while it was not my ideal preference, it was something, and it was something that sounded reasonable and tangible. So, anyway, they've been doing that, and as some of you may have known or heard, in the subsequent over this past month, the governor was challenged by no less than the Biden administration themselves. It sued our governor, Glenn Youngkin, governor of Virginia, to stop him from taking off the non-citizens from the Virginia voter rolls. That lawsuit was sent to the U.S. Supreme Court. The decision was made that he was not able to do that by a lower court, and I believe Jason Miyares, the Attorney General, was the one who forwarded that to the U.S. Supreme Court, and they just ruled on it today, as I mentioned at the beginning. They just ruled on it today, confirming Governor Youngkin's right to that it's okay to take off non-citizens who are ineligible by U.S. law to vote in a U.S. federal election, to take them off of the Virginia voting rolls. And so that is a major vindication. It's a big victory, and I am very happy. And it was providential. I mean, I believe that God made a way. I mean, how often does somebody get a chance to speak face to face with the governor Virginia is a big state, and we have a lot of people here, and so I'm thankful, and I hope that all of us working together, and I know many of you watching are working for election integrity. It is really important that we have elections. I mean, if you have elections, but they're tainted in some way, they're corrupted through people voting who do not have a right to vote, that cancels the vote of people who do have the right to vote. And so I see it as a very, very important issue. You know, why would we even want to have elections in the first place if we do not have assurance or relative assurance that the elections are honest? So I cannot even see why. I think it was also actually revealing of the Democrats and the Biden administration that they did not want to have these people taken off the voting rolls. It's very telling. And so it's okay if you think that non-citizens should be able to vote in a U.S. election. If you think that should be the law, that's fine. You can think that, but you cannot change the way that we operate until you actually change the law. And so people want to take these shortcuts to do what they want and to impose their will over the ruling and guidance of the laws that we pass through our representatives. Painstaking process to get laws passed that can't just be bypassed by some individual person who says, well, I want it to be another way because I think it's going to benefit me or my party or my candidate. So that's a little bit of background. Thought it might be interesting to you. I know it's not my regular thing that I do, but I am trying to stay engaged and involved alongside everything else. That is the first thing I wanted to talk about. The second thing is, as I said, we are just a few days away from the election. I have been involved as a volunteer in various ways here in Virginia, been out knocking on doors and writing articles and doing whatever I can, along with many other people here. I do expect that Donald Trump will be elected president next week. Now, whether it's a clear victory that no one can contest and that will be relatively uncontroversial, except for those who are just deeply, deeply upset by it, and some people will be deeply upset by it, or whether it's a closer victory that requires, it will be contested. And some of these states, Arizona, I heard, wants to drag out their counting of the votes by two weeks. Now, why you would need 2 weeks to count the votes in an election? They should be counted by election night, or in the case of a certain period of time for the receipt of mail-in ballots, within a day or two. But these extended times for counting ballots, just to me and to many other people, feels like mischief. And we have, from the research that I've done over the past several years, there is plenty of mischief, and there's plenty of opportunity for mischief. And in my book on the 2020 election, I wrote about the means, motive, and opportunity equation. When a crime has been committed, the investigators, we all know there's a means, motive, and opportunity. They look for that to try to discover what the likelihood that some person has done something or that something has occurred. And in the absence of being able to determine, the problem with elections, with the way that voting systems and balloting and so forth is set up in the United States, at least in many places, is the ballot, because they want to keep it anonymous, they keep it separate. They separate it from any identifying information from the voter at some point in the voting or the election process. Now, that would be okay if it is fully confirmed that that person is eligible to vote and that the time and manner and means of casting that ballot, everything is good with it. But what do you do if you find out later that a certain number of people had voted fraudulently or were ineligible, or that these ballots were received 3 days late, or whatever, something outside of the bounds of the law? What do you do if you have that situation and yet the ballots have already been mixed all together and they've been separated from the voter identification? You are kind of stuck at that point because you have no way of pulling those ballots back out. And so that's just one example, but there are many ways in which the system is designed. Is that a byproduct of it just wanting to have an anonymized system that protects people from being harassed for their vote, that protects the privacy of the voter? Or is it a system that allows for fraud to go on and then be unchallenged later? Because what are you going to do? Are you going to have a whole new election? And so they say, well, you should just count all the votes, and so forth. So that is the situation and the way that voting is done in our country in many places. We have big problems with that. We also have the problem of the opaqueness, I would say, of electronic voting, and the problem of vote by mail. How do you know? Typically you would identify the voter if you have an in-person voting. Many countries do not permit vote by mail. Many countries in Europe, actually, that we take, that the liberals in our country want to follow in other things, they do not follow in this because they really want to have mail-in voting. And mail-in voting is notoriously vulnerable to cheating. In what ways? People can return ballots who are not the voter. People can gather ballots from other people's mailboxes. They can, register to an unknown, to an address. They can, register on behalf of using somebody's name who doesn't exist or who has moved or whatever. If people are set up as permanent absentee, where they get automatic ballots sent out to them, and you have lists. I have been knocking on doors. I knocked on one door yesterday of somebody who, one of the people living in the household was a daughter who is still registered as a voter, because only registered voters are showing up on the list that I'm going door to door with. And the parents said she has not lived here in 20 years. She got married and she moved to a different state. She hasn't lived here for 20 years. And we have requested multiple times, and she has requested multiple times, to be removed from the voting rolls in Virginia. But for some reason, she is still on there. And, by the way, we keep, even though she is a conservative or Republican, she said, the parents said, since over the past 20 years, we've gotten a lot of regularly Democrat materials in the mail when elections come around, soliciting for her vote. So they were very curious. I'm going to be looking into this some more and possibly write an article about that. But they were concerned that somehow people were, because she's still a registered voter, that other people were taking and voting using her name to vote fraudulently. So this is the kind of thing that exists if you have mail-in balloting, and even sometimes in-person balloting, if you are able to impersonate the voter and go in and do that. Now, these are crimes, but these crimes are also rarely fully prosecuted. And there's another thing along those lines having to do with the non-citizen voting. Now, in my county of Loudoun, there were, in the month of September alone, for up through the month of September, there were 62 non-citizens removed from the voting rolls who were somehow had gotten on the voting rolls. Of those 62, 16 were found to have voted in previous elections. Now, this is a problem. That is a federal felony if it was a federal election. It is also a felony to register to vote. It's a federal felony to register to vote if you are ineligible to do so. So I took this to the Commonwealth's attorney in Virginia and sent him a letter and went to his office and spoke to him about it as well. And so these things are going on, but the problem is that in some cases these are either not prosecuted. The Commonwealth's attorney does not apparently prosecute federal law, so we need a U.S. attorney to prosecute that. And secondly, the burden of proof sometimes becomes an issue. Like, how do you know? How can you get a conviction on something if the voter, for example, the person who is registered says, well, I didn't register. Well, how can you prove that they registered? Maybe somebody else registered fraudulently on their behalf. So how can you convict them if somebody else registered in their name? So I imagine that there are various ways that this becomes difficult to prosecute, in which case, what is the deterrent value of that? What is the meaning of the law if the law is not enforced or cannot be enforced? And that's a real problem. That's a real concern that we need to deal with. Okay, so this is a lot about U.S. elections, and this is really what this video is about. I will come around a little bit more to a background on what I am up to with Quran manuscript stuff in a couple of minutes. So if you're interested in that, please hang around until the end. But the third thing that I wanted to mention to you is the priorities of President Trump when he gets elected, and one of the major campaign issues that he will have, that he has had. It was the reason he got elected in 2016 for the first time. It was the reason that I believe he was reelected in 2020, as somebody who has done extensive research on this, academic research on the topic. But anyway, that remains my opinion, my informed opinion. And it's the reason that I believe he's going to win again this time, and that is the issue of illegal immigration. We have a system of laws in the country, in the United States. The citizens of the United States deserve to have their laws applied and upheld. And among those laws are laws saying who can come into the United States and in what manner they may come in and what the process for them coming in is. We have a very extensive and long and generous policy for immigration in this country. Sometimes it takes a long time because there's so many people who want to come in. And that's like anything. If you join a line of people and you want to do it fairly, you do have to wait your turn. If there are not very many people that want to go into this store or to go through this line, then you'll probably get through the line quicker. But if there are a ton of people that want to go somewhere, it may take a little bit longer. And the reality of the situation is we cannot just admit everybody in the world who wants to come to the United States. So we have a process for legal immigration, and Americans have a very deep sense of fairness. You can't just say that the law applies to some people, but it doesn't apply to others. So when we have a situation like we have now, where millions upon millions of people have decided, well, the law can apply to everybody else, but it doesn't have to, it shouldn't apply to me. No, those are not going to be good citizens of the United States. And if they do become normalized into American society, this is a real problem, because they will tear apart the fabric of society, and then they will start voting. Core principles and values of our country be undermined by people who are not committed to the same principles that we are as a nation. If it was just the fact that we were overrun by people who took it upon themselves to come, and then they came in and changed the United States into something else, that is a very unfair and wrong situation for the United States. And people feel that deeply. That's of the 2016 candidate, the 2016 candidates, I believe they started out with 17 different candidates. The only two candidates that made it to the finals were Ted Cruz and Donald Trump. They were the only two candidates that took a strong stand on enforcing the U.S. borders and on not giving amnesty to people who had come here illegally. We're happy to have people come in the front door, but we are not happy to have the American people and our system of laws be abused. And there are consequences to that. The Democrats have, in the past 20 years especially, shifted from generally supporting that idea to fully embracing illegal immigration and seeing it as a campaign strategy to try to get all kinds of people from around the world to become U.S. citizens and to be able to vote. And so that, unfortunately, is the situation that we have. So what do we do with that? I lead into that by stating those principles, and we're not the only country in the world to have to deal with the problem of illegal immigration, uncontrolled immigration. I understand that. So many of you who are overseas will relate to this situation as well, and its possible consequences. Unfortunately, other countries are much further along in the consequences of allowing this sort of thing to happen. But one of the major points in Donald Trump's platform this time is to initiate the largest mass deportation in American history. And it sounds very dramatic. It is dramatic, actually. The problem is that now, even over the past 3.5 years, estimates are that more than 10 million additional illegal immigrants have come across the U.S. borders and are currently in the United States. We don't know who they are. Most of them, I believe, have come for economic reasons. Some of them have come for nefarious reasons. But his argument, I believe, has been that, we're going to deport everybody who's here illegally. Now, he has emphasized that he would start with the people who are the bad ones, the criminals, whatever. Well, everybody who came here illegally and has remained here illegally is a criminal, actually. But of course, the more violent ones or whatever. My suggestion is that well, let me come around to that in a minute. The reason I wanted to make this video today is that people on the left have repeatedly said, oh, how he wants to deport migrants and deport non-citizens and this. Well, yes, he does, but he doesn't want to deport people who are here legally, who have a visa, for example, to be here, or have come in through the legal process, unless in some certain situations, unless they have taken up arms against the United States or expressed sympathy for terrorist organizations or things like that. If you're in the process of being a guest in this country with permission, there are certain things that you should not be doing. It's kind of like a probation period. And so if you're expressing sympathy for the enemies of the United States, designated terrorist organizations, or you're protesting against the United States or against the things that we stand for, or fighting against, for example, free speech, which is the First Amendment in the U.S. Constitution, those are things that are red flags that might indicate that the United States and you might not be a good match for each other. So anyway, the main thing, though, is to deport illegal immigrants. And people will say, well, what are you going to do? A parent is an illegal immigrant but has a U.S. citizen child, for example. There are many people, because we have a policy in the United States of what's called birthright citizenship. It means if you're born in the United States, then you are a citizen of the United States. The effect of this birthright citizenship policy has been that it becomes a magnet for people to try to enter the country illegally and have what have been labeled anchor babies. So if you come into the United States fraudulently, sneaking in, you have a baby, the baby is a U.S. citizen, and now that becomes a pretext for you to say, well, what are you going to do? Deport me? My baby is a U.S. citizen. And so this is a problem, because it becomes a magnet for, again, lawless behavior, people abusing the system and really abusing the American people. This is not what that policy is meant to do. It's not a good thing to do, to say that you have a way of cheating and getting away with it. And for this reason, I support him doing away with birthright citizenship for people who are not here legally. It should be retained for people who are already U.S. citizens. If you have a child, that child is automatically a U.S. citizen. But it should not be if you're here illegally that your child becomes a U.S. citizen. So I think that's one of the policy changes that needs to be made. Oops. Okay, so we're coming around to it, and I know this is a little bit of a long discussion now, but the mass deportation. So what are we going to do with this argument where people say, well, you can't deport them. What are you going to do? Deport a mom who has a U.S. citizen child? And the answer to that question has to be, yes, we are going to deport that mom, or ask her to self-deport. And the reason behind that answer is, look, when you have committed a crime, there are consequences to that crime. And if you are a parent, if you rob a bank, you don't get to say, well, I don't want to go to jail because, look, I have children and I'll be separated from my children. Well, I'm sorry, you should have thought of that before you robbed a bank. But there's a difference in this case. Whereas you cannot take your children to prison with you, if you have to leave the country and return to the country of your citizenship, in every case that I'm aware of, you are able to take your minor children along with you, even if they're not a citizen of the country where your citizenship is. So if there's a parent whose citizenship is in Guatemala or Germany or China or Mongolia or wherever, and they have U.S. citizen children, they can return to that country and take those children with them if they want to. It's entirely up to the person if they want to take their children with them or find some other means, but it does not get them off the hook from having to exit the country, whether that's willfully doing so or to be compelled to do so by being removed by the authorities. Which brings me around to the final thing that I want to discuss, and that is, how would this happen? We have currently probably over 20 million, currently as many as 20 million illegal immigrants in the United States. And deporting somebody is a very expensive process. Unfortunately, it's one that's been made necessary by the actions of this administration, and really amplified by the actions of this Biden and Harris administration. But there we are. It exists. That problem exists, and we have to do it. So, but I don't think that the deportation is going to, or needs to be, immediately. We're going to start knocking on people's doors and getting them out of the country. It probably does in the case of criminals and so forth. But what I have recommended, and I do not know what President Trump is going to do, but what I have recommended, and I've heard other people say, is that you need to give a window, maybe 3 months or 6 months time, during which people who are not here legally have the opportunity to travel back to the country of their citizenship, set their affairs in order here, do whatever they need to do, get back out of the United States and go to the country of their citizenship. And during that window of time, if you are here illegally, you will retain the right to get in line along with everybody else and re-enter the United States at some point if you so choose. That would be a special grace extended to the people in this instance. And then would come the deadline, at which time, if you are here illegally and you do not exercise that option to self-deport, and then you would start deporting people by use of the authorities. And at that time, if you are deported in that way, you should be permanently banned from ever re-entering the United States. And I think that incentive, that carrot, that offer of grace for example, to people who have entered the country illegally and saying, look, we are going to give you this one-time offer to still get in line and, behind everybody else who's already waiting in line, and, apply for entry into the United States through the normal front door visa process. That's it. That's an incentive. And then the stick being, the threat of being deported and never being able to enter the United States again. That two-step process, I think, would probably cause most people who are reasonable to take care of it themselves. I think it would be a relatively small number of people who would not avail themselves of that opportunity, and would remain here and have to be deported through the expensive and difficult process, and sometimes legally complicated process of getting people out. But that does need to be done. But I by no means do I think that needs to be done to all 20 million or so, however many people are here. Now, the second question, that I wanted to address is the question of the people who say, well, why do you really need to even deport the people who are here, came here to seek a better life, and they just, they're good parents to their kids, and they're law-abiding citizens, and they're, who can blame them? They come from poverty, their their country is not good. There's a process for asylum for people who are threatened, whose lives are threatened, who are politically threatened in their home countries. The asylum process is not for people who are just poor in their other country and would find a better life in the United States. I mean, we want people to come here, but that's what the legal immigration process is for. But there's a way for that. But aside from that, we're back to the same question, and that question is, are you going to have two sets of laws for people? And are you going to create a lawless society? You're going to tell people again and again that, this is what Ronald Reagan did in the 1980s, is he gave an amnesty to people who are here illegally. It was supposed to be a one-time thing, but the effect of that amnesty was to let people know that, hey, if you take it upon yourself to sneak into the United States, someday in the future, they've already shown that they are going to give you a pass and let you become normalized into American society. And so that's the reason that cannot happen again, is that it only perpetuates the problem. It only creates an incentive for people to continue to abuse our country and abuse our borders and abuse the goodwill of the American people. And that should not happen. So there you have it. Those are my views, my opinions on this. I've thought about these policy things for many, many years. I love people. I love immigrants. I love people from all around the world who love the United States and want to come here and be part of American society. I think that's a wonderful, wonderful thing, and so I'm grateful. If you are an immigrant, welcome. If you have come here through the lawful process, I think that's a fantastic thing. And if you are here illegally, I don't dislike you. I don't wish you anything but good. But I do urge you to do the right thing and follow the laws. Many people in churches who are Christians, and I am a Christian, are here illegally, and I would advise you the same way. The Bible says that we should respect the governing authorities, that we should follow the laws of those who are ruling, and it's a paraphrase. Especially as a Christian, you should have that as part of your witness, that you respect the government and the governing laws of the country. So sometimes people say, well, these are great Christians and great churches and so forth. Part of being in this world and living as a good witness in this world and doing what's right is following the laws of the land. So there you go. I wish everybody well. Now, I promised you that at the end of this video I would give you a little update on what I'm doing in terms of the Quran manuscript stuff. And there is some exciting news, and that the first exciting news is that Quran Gateway, it was assigned to me in a legal settlement in almost 3 years ago now. This is in final process actually of going back up at QuranGateway.org and QuranGateway.co.uk. So very soon, probably within weeks of you seeing this video, you can know that you will be able to once again sign up for an account and have access to many of the Quran manuscript correction records and so forth. Much more extensive list of those than are in either my book or in the videos that I've put up on Variant Quran. And you'll be able to reference those for yourself and look them up and so forth. And that will, God willing, will be expanded over time so that as we get more people to come. If you would like to be part of that project, I know I do have colleagues who are working in the field and are in the process of getting their own PhDs and so forth, and I will be speaking with them as well. But this project of Quran Gateway is a place of collaboration and a place that gives full credit to everybody for their work. And so if you are a researcher, there will be ways for fruitful collaboration and for recognition for you for your work and to be cited for the research that you have done. If you're a young scholar who's coming up in the area and want to do work like this and put it up in a way that can be cited and get you citations, because the number of citations really does matter in academic publications and so forth. So reach out to us. You can send, I'll give you contact information in the future on that, but just keep that in mind. So that's one exciting bit of news. The academic book I've been busy with a couple of other projects. I have a very exciting, in my view, exciting book on the topic of socialism coming out soon, and that's the next one. But the big academic book on Quran manuscripts coming soon. The response to Tayyar Al-Takulich is also in process, believe it or not. I know I've said that many times that I'm working on it. I just have too many irons in the fire. And then I am also working on a second book, like my first book, Corrections in Early Quran Manuscripts, a second book with more examples for you as well, that will also be very easy for non-specialists to reference and to work with. So there we go. There we have it. How should I wrap up? We have been praying for the United States, for our government, for our country. I know it's sometimes hard for people outside of the United States, and sometimes, depending on where you get your news, it's very hard to understand what's going on, even if you're inside the United States. But I've found, we have a daughter overseas in college right now, and in my travels and through her experiences as well, sometimes the news, what's really happening in the United States, gets quite distorted in the international news, and so the perception of the personalities and the political landscape in the United States is quite different, in my view, from what it actually is. So I'll be giving more, I can give more information on that as it comes, but in terms of Trump versus Harris and the Republicans versus the Democrats generally, but in terms of Trump versus Harris, we supported, I actually was very cautiously supported him the first time in 2016, and somewhat reluctantly, hoping, because the things he was saying and promising were very good, including the border and other matters. Just wasn't sure if he was going to follow through on them. But when he got in office, he performed very, very well. He kept many more of his campaign promises than I think any other president I can remember. Good campaign promises, not bad ones. And so his policy proposals now are excellent, including the deportation that I mentioned, and also the abolition of the Department of Education. This existed since 1979. We were a country for 200 years before we had any federal Department of Education, and it was created by Jimmy Carter, and it's been a disaster. Our outcomes have gone down. In the country, education outcomes have gone down since then. It's become so politicized. It's just a big money machine, an excuse for the federal government to ideologically control the schools and so forth. And so it needs to be done away with. It does not mean that people want to get rid of education. In fact, education is going to be far, far improved when the Department of Education no longer exists. So anyway, we really do look forward to that. There are a number of other things in his policy proposals that are just absolutely excellent, and I do hope and pray that he gets elected. As far as world peace and everything, we had such a peaceful 4 years when he was in the first time, and then, of course, weak leaders bring war, and that's exactly what Joe Biden is and has done. He had the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, which was not forced on him by Donald Trump, quite contrary to what some people would say. Trump set a date for it and so forth, but he would never have withdrawn us in that disastrous manner and left those people to be victimized, and left all that material, that $83 billion in material there and so forth, and given away Bagram airfield and so forth. So anyway, this led to the war in Ukraine. The emboldened Vladimir Putin went in and invaded Ukraine and so forth. All these things unfolded because of the weakness of a really bad leader, Joe Biden. And so we look forward to a more peaceful time. Now we are on a brink of, and of course, what has happened in Israel. We went from a situation in 3.5 short years of very movement toward great peace in that area to what we see now with this chaos and, just sad deaths on all sides, which were completely unnecessary and would not have happened if it were not for the weak leadership of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris over the past 3.5 years. I'm convinced. The Abraham Accords were such promising steps, and Saudi Arabia was getting ready to sign on as well. And then we moved from that to this terrible situation now. So war may not be avoidable at this point, but if it is, it's not going to be avoided by Joe Biden or by Kamala Harris if she, God forbid, gets elected. But I think our best way forward is with Donald Trump, because he has a good head on his shoulders and knows how to talk to people. And, we had to actually very peaceful relationships after some saber rattling from Kim Jong-un in North Korea, even during the Trump administration the first time. So these are all things that really make a difference, not only to the United States, but also to the world. And I wanted you to understand kind of my thinking on it. You may not have heard some of these perspectives before if you're overseas, or even if you're here. You may be surprised that someone like myself, a lot of academics tend to be liberal or left or Democrat. It's rare to find somebody like myself in academia, but here I am. I don't think that people supporting that side are better people. In fact, I think it's a very, in my view, morally reprehensible to support the things that the Democrats, the American Democrats, support. But we can talk more about that later. I don't think every person who votes for them is ill-meaning, but the policies are really, really bad, pretty much across the board. So that's that, and here I am. We're going through. We've been on this channel now for, when did I start this channel? Was it 2019? I suppose it's almost 5 years that we've been doing this, and in addition to the academic work, we're kind of I'm fairly open about my life, so happy to let you in on some of these things too. We're going through life together. You've progressed in your life 5 years since we started as well, so you've learned and grown and done things other than Quran related stuff, I'm sure too. So it's kind of fun to do this together, and I see no need to keep everything segmented off into little compartments. So yeah, hope you are doing well. It's good to talk to you all again, and please leave comments below. I don't want to get into a whole lot of political back and forth and political discussion in the comments. I'm not going to be argumentative with people. You can say whatever you want in the bottom if you want to make comments and so forth, but I may generally refrain. I don't want to argue with folks who are watching this too much, but comment what you think about the election, what direction you think it's going to go, or if you're watching this video after the election has occurred, let's have a discussion about what is going on afterward. And boy, we're praying for a peaceful outcome, because people are really at the boiling point on election integrity, and on all sides, people are really, really very, very frustrated in the United States now. So yeah, so let's pray for a de-escalation, for the return of civil society and people being able to disagree with each other, to do so openly without harming each other. And we pray for God to bless America, and God bless you. And we'll look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks so much. Bye.